Good evening, you guys, and welcome. Welcome to 90 Days Through the Word. And today is day 57. And our reading finds us today on day 57 in chapter 33 of the book of Jeremiah through chapter 47:7 of the book of Jeremiah. We had a lot of reading to do today. And there is quite a bit in our reading to digest. There's quite a bit to digest. First of all, and I did write in my handy dandy journal today as well. Let's just go through my notes real quickly and see if that can help us in regards to the reading review. Now, in chapter 33, the Lord promises future health and healing and a promise of restoration and mercy once this 70 years of exile is completed. And then in chapter 34, King Nebuchadnezzar, who we're going to call King Nebi, and Babylon are the whole beginnings of the siege of Jerusalem, and the exile has started, and the people release, what does it say? Oh, the people release slaves, and then they take slaves back in disobedience because the Lord wanted them liberated after 7 years, and so the Lord finds them disobedient. There are some covenants made with the Lord, and there is a prophecy that Zedekiah, a particular king, is going to die in Babylon. The Rechabites are rewarded by the Lord for doing what they are told, for obedience to Jonadab, their leader. The Rechabites are rewarded by the Lord for obedience to their leader, Jonadab. And that is in chapter 35. Yes, chapter 35. In chapter 36, Jeremiah dictates this letter to Baruch because he cannot go into the house of the Lord because he's banned from the house of the Lord. And so he dictates this letter from the Lord to be read in the house of the Lord by Baruch. And so he does read this letter, but King Zedekiah does not like the letter. He rips the letter up and throws it into the fire pot, and so it's burnt. And so this makes for an awkward situation because King Zedekiah wants no part of the letter. They do not want to listen to the message of Jeremiah, and this is one of the ways that they avoid listening to what the Lord has sent Jeremiah to say, is by ripping up the scroll and throwing it in the fire pot. It's a lot. There's a lot that goes on in our reading today in the book of Jeremiah. So let's see what's next. Oh, Jeremiah is beaten and imprisoned for desertion. Of course, he was not guilty of such an act, but nevertheless, he is beaten and imprisoned for desertion. And then Jeremiah is dumped into a muddy cistern, and he is rescued by an Ethiopian who uses 30 other men and a bunch of rags under Jeremiah's arms to pad them to lift him up out of this muddy pit of a cistern, because he was stuck in the mud. So the only way they could lift him out was with all these strong men and these pads of rags and stuff under his shoulders. Craziness going on in the book of Jeremiah. And so Jeremiah is beaten, he's imprisoned, he's dumped into a cistern, and then he's rescued from the cistern by an Ethiopian and 30 guys. and then he goes back into imprisonment, and then Jerusalem falls in chapter 39, and then toward the end of our reading today, Jeremiah is delivered by the Lord because he did he did everything that the Lord had asked him to do. And incidentally, in the beginning of the text, the Lord indicates he kind of suggests that there's going to become a point in time where I'm going to have to rescue you. And this is that point in time when he's in this cistern, because if he was going to die in there if they had not rescued him. Now, in chapter 41, this individual by the name of Jedaliah is murdered. And then he dumps a bunch of bodies into a cistern. Yes, a bunch of bodies are dumped into the cistern in regards to the pending exile of the folks. And Jeremiah is forced to go to Egypt, but the Lord has said he don't want nobody going to Egypt, but he's forced to go. The Lord has Jeremiah tell them that he does not want anybody to go to Egypt, but they go anyway. They're disobedient once again by going to Egypt when the Lord has said do not go to Egypt. Now, let's think back. Why, oh why, would any Israelite want to go back to Egypt when our forefathers have been rescued from Egypt and there are pharaohs there? Why on earth would anybody want to go to Egypt? And especially because the Lord said, don't do it. Don't go to Egypt. But they went anyway. Judgment and disaster follow in Egypt, of course. And of course, there is a remnant of folks that are saved. And that is where our reading stops us today. There's much sword, famine, and pestilence throughout our reading, but it's a whole mess. It's a whole lot, and it's a whole mess because of disobedience of the Israelites and not following the commands and the will of the Lord, which has been spelled out to them on more than one occasion. Now, tomorrow our reading starts toward the end of chapter 47, and we move on to chapter 48, where Moab, there's judgment in regards to Moab and Ammon, more judgment by the Lord to these different places. And then finally, in chapter 50, the judgment in regards to Babylon that we will read tomorrow. So tomorrow our reading finds us finishing the book of Jeremiah and moving on to the book of Lamentations. So toward the end of our reading tomorrow, chapter 50, judgment comes to Babylon as the Lord has prophesied through his prophet Jeremiah from the beginning, that ultimately judgment would come to Babylon after all of these other judgments had, come their way. So that's all I have for us today. We read a lot today, so much, but our reading finds us tomorrow in Jeremiah 48:1 through Lamentations 1:22. And so I thank you. I joy to come to you in this fashion, and I hope and pray that you are reading along with us. I am looking at, in Sunday school today, we were in the book of Acts, and we talked some about another Ethiopian in the book of Acts, and Philip. And so I'm doing a few keyword searches and studies that I'm looking forward to sharing with you later on this week. So thank you and have a blessed day in the Lord.